The Nintendo Switch continues to set record. HAL Laboratories hiring for a new Kirby game. Prince of Persia devs want to make Zelda. And yes, we're talking about Palworld. It's the LP Podcast. Hello and happy Tuesday. It's the day of the week where I get to do more talking than playing of Nintendo games, but Nintendo is the topic all the same, except for today. We're going to start with something of a departure because we're talking about Palworld. Not inherently a Nintendo game. In fact, not a Nintendo game in any small semblance of the word. It's a PC game currently out on Steam, developed and published by Pocket Pair. Why is this relevant? Well, if you've kept a keen ear or eye to the gaming pulse over the last, goodness gracious, at the very least of the last few days, you would know that Palworld is, at the very least, heavily influenced by Pokemon. You see the trailer here playing on Steam, and initially, you'd think, wow, that looks really cool. And I would agree with you. It does look good. It's been heralded as, quote-unquote, Pokemon with guns. You can see there's some sort of crafting element. It seems to be a relatively, dare I say, well-made game. And what's more, the reviews are very positive, with 93,000 of 59,000 users reviewing it as such. 59,000 isn't the cap, though. You'd see 59,000, you would think, yeah, that's a really good showing for a new, relatively indie game. But it's so much more, because it set a record with 5 million copies sold this weekend, which is astra-freaking-nomical, okay? 5 million? Like, if I had 5 million anything, I'd be probably concerned. 5 million is huge. It was a shocking success, and it was the number 3 concurrent player spot on Steam, which is another raging success in and of itself. Obviously, it was, backed up by the Pokemon comparisons. The Pokemon with gun tag that seemingly it was marketed as really served to do it well, because it picked up steam with the hardcore Pokemon fans, right, that are just interested in anything somewhat Pokemon adjacent, and it also picked up steam with people that are whatever the opposite of that is, people that have longed for maybe a more adult type Pokemon. Now, I don't consider myself of that variety, and in fact, I have not played this, and spoiler alert, will not play it. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But it is not without negativity surrounding it, right? And you'd think, well, LP, that's friggin' crazy. You sell 5 million copies with overwhelming positive remarks after the fact. You'd got to think that there's nothing bad to say about it. And there may, in fact, not be. But there is some dialogue, we'll say, out there about accusations of AI usage. So Palworld accusations are currently based on Vibes, a social deduction game, and the CEO's past tweets about machine-generated Fakemon. So years ago, the CEO, Takuro Mizobi, made a set of tweets showing an astonishment at AI-generated Fakemon after BuzzFeed's data scientist Max Wolf created a ream of the little monsters with machine learning. Excuse me. Push comes to shove, in summation, he just had good things to say about it, saying that, wow, this could be the future of Pokemon, or of creating games even. And with Palworld coming out and a number of the creatures bearing no small levels of resemblance to existing Pokemon, we'll talk about that in a second as well, it's led to some accusations that Palworld used AI generation in order to render their creatures. Now, we don't have any proof of that. There's actually been no whistleblowing, no definitive paper trail, nothing of the sort that would lead us to believe that, yes, Palworld is utilizing completely AI-generated assets. That being said, there is no shortage of influence from Pokemon. And X, Twitter, whatever, not a huge fan of the website, but user onion_moo compiled a list of images of similarities from Palworld creatures and Pokemon. You can see several here between Flareon and Cinderace and even Arcanine, and Leafeon too, all of them compiling some similarities. This looks remarkably like Cinderace, just like a green version. And then scrolling down, we can continue to see several more Palworld friends looking very similar to Pokemon compatriots. Now, art in general is derivative, right? I don't think that at this point anyone is creating something that wasn't somewhat, if not directly, influenced by a predecessor. Even what I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? Like podcasting, I'm not the first one to do this. I'm not even the first one to do podcasting in this style. Anyone who creates anything at all is either knowingly or unknowingly influenced. That being said, a lot of these are, well, they've got to be knowingly influenced, right? It can't just be purely from a Pokemon fan who is pushing Pokemon aside and just creating monsters and like, wow, that kind of looks like Pokemon. I almost feel like that they got an image of Lucario up here and they are creating their new friend here. Again, much like the AI conversation in the past slide, there's no definitive proof either which way. And there's a lot of vitriol in online conversation around this. The camps are equally divided. It's almost become a binary thing, whether or not you support Palworld or you don't. And I'm going to sit here and say that I am riding the fence because I don't have enough information to make any sort of informed choice on that. Like I said, I'm not going to be playing it, but that is because I just don't really play games on the PC. So, oh, moving on. More bad news for Palworld, or at least more bad news adjacent to Palworld. There was a modder, and this was very quick, actually, both in terms of the production of the mod as well as the smackdown by Nintendo, which we all know is very protective of their IPs. A modder had created a mod for Palworld that would allow you to play as Ash Ketchum and reskinned the Palworld demons. I don't know what the pals as Pokemon. He's already been he's already been contacted, which I don't know why anyone would be surprised, right? Because Nintendo is not going to want to tie themselves to something that they did not directly create, number one. And number two, I don't think that they want their creatures, their creations specifically, to be holding weapons. All right? I know that I talked about some people wanting like a more mature Pokemon with guns, Pokemon with drugs, Pokemon that have to do taxes or what. I don't know. I mean, that's not what I enjoy Pokemon for. I enjoy Pokemon and video games in general for an escape from the terrors of modern life. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't play a Pokemon, I don't play a video game in general for the realism. I play to escape that. So that's probably not where Nintendo is going with this. Obviously, they just want to protect their IP from a financial perspective and a brand sort of sterility perspective. But there you have it. So any other future modders probably expect to be treated similarly. I mean, Nintendo has done this their entire time that they've been in existence, and it continues to be met with some level of scrutiny by some people. Of course, there are others like myself that completely understand why they would want to do things like this, and it makes sense financially too, because Nintendo just keeps setting records. The Nintendo Switch set a record for game releases in 2023 with 2,360 games released. That's crazy. All right. If anyone's out there trying to complete a library, you know, the Wii library was crazy enough to complete. I think this has outpaced it. I'm not 100% certain. Either which way, I've mentioned it ad nauseum throughout this podcast. I feel like every other week I've mentioned how great 2023 was for Nintendo, and obviously for the Nintendo Switch, equally as good. Obviously, not all of those near 2,400 games were physical, so, you know, if you're trying to collect them all, number one, good luck. But number two, you're going to have some eShop purchases as well. And it kind of differentiates that here in the bullet points of this article. It says the Switch's first-party lineup in 2023 included surprises like Super Mario RPG and Metroid Prime Remastered, alongside highly anticipated games like The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Moving on to the eShop, it saw unexpected digital hits such as the Suika game, Watermelon, which outsold Tears of the Kingdom in Japan. Interesting. Though Tears of the Kingdom remained the best-selling physical game in the region. So among eShop games, Suika game took #1 spot. That's pretty fantastic. Good for them. Holy cow, and that's not been out anywhere near as long as Tears of the Kingdom. I think Suika came out in the fall. Obviously, Tears of the Kingdom came out May 12th. Very, very good. 2,360 games released on the Nintendo Switch, which is a record for the console in its 6th year. Goodness gracious. Continuing to push the bar, and with conversations quickly shifting themselves over to what is next for Nintendo. They're ending the tenure, one would think, on quite a freaking bang. Speaking of bangs, Kirby. Kirby was a franchise that saw a non-zero amount of representation on the Switch. Kirby and the Forgotten Land was a great game. Return to Dream World DX, also a great remaster. It looks like HAL Laboratories is hiring for the next Kirby game. Kirby developer HAL Laboratories has put out a post recruiting for the next adventure in the beloved Kirby series. The deadline for new applicants to apply is actually just 3 weeks away. So with this having been posted, let's see here. Yesterday, you got 20 days. Go apply. If you're a developer keen on participating in such a project, you hop to it, my friend. I applaud you. The last Kirby game we received was a delightful remake of the Wii game, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Whatever HAL has cooking up, hopefully it will be another hit with fans and newcomers. I'd have to imagine it will be. I heavily anticipate it. All right, I have loved every Kirby game I've ever played, and probably, spoiler alert, will continue to do so. Speaking of loving old games and old classics, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown developers would love to make a Zelda game. Specifically, they mention a Zelda 2 remake, which is interesting because we've talked on this podcast about what games should be remade, right? What games would we like to see remastered or rekindled or otherwise redone in some capacity with the newfound technology as opposed to whatever the case was in the past. Zelda 2 was not a game that came up in that conversation, but I think it is ripe for a remake. At this point, gosh darn near 30 years old. He's older than 30 years, actually. But over 3 decades old, it definitely could do with a facelift. And it's interesting because I have not played this Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown game. It came out relatively recently, actually, and drew some decent praise. So I'd like to think that the Prince of Persia devs could do quite well with it. As we all know, Zelda 2 is a kind of a departure from what Zelda 1 was, and is a formula that I don't think has actually been replicated in a Zelda game since. It's the like the side-scrolling sort of Zelda adventure. And that is typically the case in a lot of Prince of Persia games, so I'd be very curious to see if there's any legs to this, or if this is more or less just someone saying, hey, we'd love to take your money. I mean, maybe it's a bit of both, right? They'd love to have the money. They'd love to work on a project that they're passionate about. I think that would be awesome either which way. And speaking of projects and passion and pizzazz and other words that start with peach. P? Oh, I let the cat out of the bag. Princess Peach Showtime gets another trailer. Yes, indeed. It is the official transformation trailer, and I have not watched it. So I think that it would be a nice little treat here at the end of the podcast to watch this together. So Ninja Peach is new, I think. We saw a few of these on the Nintendo Direct. Swashbuckler? No, that's Cowgirl Peach. Okay. Also new. Oh, I'm so excited for this. And there she is, the Swashbuckler. Sword Fighter Peach. She's gonna stab you right in the spleen. Very good. And Detective Peach. Another one that we were familiar with alongside Sword Fighter Peach. So that's 4 transformations. Cook, chef, gourmet, pâtissière. Okay, that's 5. 5 peaches a pickin'. Oh boy, they do be quickin'. And a 6th with Kung Fu Peach. Very good. 6 is plenty, I'd say. And it looks like 6 is the extent of it. Okay. Very cool. Available March 22nd. Exactly 1 month away. Wow. I'm very excited, if you couldn't tell. I'm keen on playing that for the channel, and I am keen on exploring all of those transformations. Initially, I feel like I'm going to be the most drawn to the Sword Fighter Peach and the Kung Fu Peach, but I can see how any of the others are going to provide a well, a non-zero amount of entertainment, number one, as well as a huge array of possible solutions to puzzles and things like that, right? The Patissiere Peach, you're going to have to cook things for a hungry so-and-so to make them move or put them to sleep. You're going to have to detectivize yourself to find clues to open doors or overcome obstacles. You're going to have to use the Cowgirl Peach to milk your enemies. No, you're going to have to wrangle them. It's going to be great. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to participate in it. I can't wait to play it. And what's more, I can't wait to see you next week. Because yes, this is the end of the podcast. They grow ever shorter when we don't have guests. Guests will be returning in the future. And I think I should mention this. There is going to be a slight break, a slight pause in the podcast. There will be no podcast next Tuesday or the Tuesday after that. The hope is that we can resume in the middle of February. So keep an eye, an ear, or a tongue out, and we'll see what happens. I am moving, so, things get crazy. Either which way, I have been LP, your host. I thank you so much for watching. I do this every Tuesday, except for the next 2 Tuesdays, and I have a great time doing it. So, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and hope that you enjoyed yourself. And with that said, I will see you not next week, but next time.